You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
Hello, everybody. This is Something Rather Than Nothing, and I am most pleased to have Aranea Push here on the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's a real treat to be here.
It is. It's been nice to chat a little bit about podcasting and learn about your art. Everybody on the show, I often mention Browser's Bookstore in Albany, Oregon, and the bookstore owner there, Abe, talk a lot about art and local artists and stuff, and have a local artist. And I encountered your book, Coffee and Wine, and I just want to talk about it just like for a bit. Beautiful volume, and it compiles material that you've had online, and it's still accessible online. I got to tell you, I was most pleased to hear about that history, but also to see the option in print form, for the tactile. So I was just really moved by the book, and in the two facets would be the art and the illustration in and of itself, but also the storytelling, which of course is like such a crucial part of comics and graphic novel, of a really rich story of about just like regular humans and like relationship and interacting and living. Subtle and just really noticeable piece. So everybody listening, I highly recommend it. We'll get into the details a little bit later, but tell us about Coffee and Wine. Tell us about, this is a long trajectory I've seen as far as putting it together, a long project that takes its form in the book. But tell us about this work of art, Coffee and Wine.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for reading it and all of those kind words. It's very sweet. Coffee and Wine started as I don't know if you've heard of NaNoWriMo before.
No.
National Novel Writing Month, which is a fun little game that people play in November, where they try to write 50,000 words of a novel in 1 month.
Whoa.
And I have some family members who were big into that project when I wrote this about 10 years ago. So it started as just a National Novel Writing Month entry. And its initial kernel, like the initial idea, comes from it comes from Three Dog Night's song "Joy to the World."
Hell yeah.
So like the main character's name is Jeremiah. He loves wine. That was like the initial, the fun part that got me into it. But so I finished it in that month, and then I put it away for a long time. And then I pulled the edition back out, the draft I had, and I read it, and I felt like there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to keep exploring with it. And I also wanted it to become a graphic novel because I was learning about the art form of graphic novels, and I was just completely enamored with it.
Yeah.
And as I was writing it and rewriting it, it became a lot like that initial kernel idea. It's almost nothing like that now. And it became a lot about the quiet conversations we have with each other that teach us more about ourselves, like that encourage us to be vulnerable, encourage us to ask for help, and encourage us to help others. And all of those things came out in the book, but I didn't realize it until it was halfway done. I didn't start making the finished pages until January of 2020. I started the first week of January 2020, and I was like, this is going to be the project for this year.
Yeah.
And what a silly idea that was, because a few months later, it became almost impossible to work on anything for a long time for me, for obvious reasons. So it took about 3 years to actually finish it, which is
Yeah.
why I posted the pages online as I was doing it.
Yeah.
And now it's a book, and it's been a year since I self-published it, and I still can't believe it.
That it's like in this physical form. You had been
Mhm.
putting it out for so long that it's all right there. What about the graphic novel you had mentioned as far as the form and what
Mhm.
attracted you to it? How did that happen? Had you been reading had you been reading a lot of
Yeah,
graphic? Yeah.
at that time, which was about 2016, 2017, my brother was sharing a lot of graphic novels that he was reading with me. Graphic novels like Johnny Wander by Yuka Oda
Mhm.
and Anya's Ghost by Vera Brosgol, who's another
Oh gosh, that's a
semi.
beauty. That's a
Oh,
beauty.
right.
Yeah.
She's an incredible comic artist.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed with, because I'd read comics growing up, like, comic strips and like I'd read some superhero comic books, but this was the first time that I had really seen long form comics, like
Yeah.
comics that were full stories, telling deep, complicated stories with
Yeah.
these beautiful pictures, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah,
So,
was that a big thing? I mean, to see it in print, right? You had that impression. I
mhm,
mean, I've read comics, I mean, since I was in diapers, so it's like just a long time. And
mhm.
seeing the explosion in graphic novels and that type of storytelling, manga, it's just been a glorious development. But was that part of the thing, seeing it in print form, being like, hey, this is on the shelf next to, like these,
Yeah.
these other like things that
Yeah.
really impressed you.
It
Uh,
feels
yeah,
that way now.
yeah,
When I got it printed, I was so burnt out on the project. I was just so desperate to have it done
yeah,
that, and I had no confidence in it. I was way too close to it, and I hadn't had any feedback on it yet. So I had no confidence in it as a project. I was like, I need to get the story done. It needs to be out of my head, and then I'll just put it away, and I'll never look at it ever again. But luckily, I had people in my life who basically demanded that I get it printed.
I got that impression in some of your
Yeah.
notes and comments in the book itself. I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So I have a an art accountability partner who was basically encouraging me the whole time I was making this project. And my husband was like, I don't care if we print 10 copies, we're getting it printed. We're
Hell
gonna
yeah.
make it into a thing. And then I have another friend in Portland who's a graphic designer who basically offered up her services to lay out the book for me because I was so done at that point. And so it was with a lot of help from other people around me that this even got printed. But now that it is, I'm so proud of it.
Yes, I'd like to hear that. It needs a push sometimes.
Hmm.
I think, when you're creating and you're talking about art and creation, I find that I've done the podcast for 5 years, and it's been a very fertile and like great thing for me. But as an artist, the space that you exist in as a creator, you're in it's quiet sometimes.
Hmm.
It's like, what is this thing? I ask this about the show, like, what the heck is it? Like, what's it doing? It's like it's under my control, but yeah, I wanted to ask you to chat a bit about art and
Hmm.
um uh and being an artist have you always seen yourself as an artist, creator, or was there a point where it's like, damn, now wait a second. I'm thinking now.
Mm.
I checked out your website and I saw a picture when you were quite young, and so I had the answer to my question, but um, identifying as an artist, so it was you were younger and painting as in the newspaper, I believe, but was there a point for you that you saw yourself as an artist?
Hmm. I think I've been an artist my whole life.
Yeah.
I think I've been an artist the whole time. Yeah, that picture was when I was 5 at an art festival in small town Nebraska, and just like finger painting. But yeah, I feel like I've always been doing art. I've always been drawing in the margins of my school homework and doodling on the back of any piece of paper I could get my hands on. But I do feel like the identity of when I became a capital A artist uh, isn't quite that simple,
Yeah.
because I think it has to do a little bit with the question of I don't know what is art, or why are you doing art. But when I was in high school, I think I really longed for um, I longed for community in art. Like, I longed to be around other people who were also making art,
Yeah.
but there weren't that many people. I joined the art guild for the briefest moment of my town, and it was all like I was I don't know, 15, 16, and it was all retired people who were basically modeling for me that art was something that you got to do once you were done living a whole life of doing a job that made money.
Okay. Well,
um,
everybody's path is different, so yeah.
yeah, and that was and that there wasn't really anybody modeling for me how I could keep doing art
Sure.
without having to do something else during the day. Um, and so in high school, when they demand that you pick a career, which is the silliest thing in the whole world, I decided that I wanted to be a graphic designer because I knew there was an industry for that, and that would be practical, and I would survive doing that. I would make money doing that. And so that's what I went to college for. And then when I got out of college, I worked for 3 years as an in-house graphic designer, doing logos, doing package design, doing everything that a graphic designer does. And I hated it.
Ah.
I hated it so much. To the point where they offered me a raise. They offered me the job of art director, and I didn't want it. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I basically quit at that moment. And then I started freelancing. And that was only like 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I moved to Oregon, and I found a lot of other artists, a lot of other community members, a lot of people my age doing art, which was that community that I was looking for.
Yeah.
But it was a different kind of vibe. And it was like, there was a lot of that energy that you were talking about with people using their art during the protests of 2020 and how powerful art could be.
Yeah.
There was that vibe, but a little bit too far, where the idea was your art has to do something. Your art has to say something. If your art isn't saying something, if your art isn't changing the world, then what's the point? And I think it's really impossible to make art with the concept of what you have to say going into it. And I think it messed me up for a little bit. And I actually I burnt out on art, and because I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to say with it. And so there was a period of time where I was like, well, I guess maybe I don't make art. Maybe I'm not an artist. And that was only 3 or 4 years ago. So I feel like I'm getting there now, but I feel like I can say that I'm an artist with a capital A now, but considering I've been doing it my whole life, it hasn't felt that simple.
No, and I think talking about that, there is such a vacillation, I think, for artists. It's such a weird territory. I found myself in creating what I've really enjoyed is that there's something different about being an artist, of a way of interacting, seeing what you're able to say. It's a different territory that I didn't feel it in my bones existed until I was creating regularly. So just this profound attachment to the idea of art and the artist. But I do know what you say about. I'll give you an example of like around with that times when my art must be political, or something's happened in the world, and it's like I get a picture of a flower or something here, and I'm like, there's people dying. There's people dying, right? Like, so what do
Yeah.
you do? But I remember that as the protests were going on, I had created some material that I pre-recorded, and in my head, with everything that was going on, it felt dated from like a week or two ago. I'm like, I don't know how to release this, and it was just all really in my head about that. But it's such a pervasive feeling when there's change and people are things are going on, where you're like, am I contributing? What am I saying within it? What is this thing that I'm creating within this new context of the world that is a challenge? Can
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
really
And I
be a
think
challenge. Yeah.
I think the idea that art has to say something is the wrong way around. I think it's that art does say something, but you just don't know what it is until it's done. Like, you don't know what it is until it's out there.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Well,
and I
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
go, the idea that you were talking about, that there's some almost ephemeral way that you interact with art. I really identify with that, because I think that art is our way of getting out this feeling that we don't have words for, because words are so, like, there's such an abstraction by themselves, and if we could say it, we probably would, but there's all of these things that we just can't seem to say simply, and so we make art to say it.
I really love that. My goodness. I think I didn't even ask the what is art, but my gosh, that no,
It's too
no,
late.
guys, it's too late. It's too late. You're running. Um, No, the language. A lot of times I ask
Mhm.
the question, it has to do with the language. It has to do with there's something inside of you, or some weird vision or something, and you put it out there, and it doesn't have the purpose. It's where did this come from? I don't know, but it's there now, and I think that's part of that whole creative realm, where you're saying, as far as, people can create art for a purpose. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create this in order to make everybody upset and bring into question this type of thing, which is deliberate
Mhm.
in what you're doing, but, which is fine, which is an approach. But, I think, I, English lit major way back in it, English and philosophy, words. How do you say things, right? Like, and language and stories are so um, important to me, and I really sync with that idea of how do you say the thing, if not but for art? Like,
Mhm.
how this is the realm in order to put it out or say the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Role of art, we've definitely been bumping around in that. I
Mhm.
just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about maybe the role of art for you, or the of art overall, if you have
Mm.
thinking about that.
Oh man. Do people really have an answer for the role of art overall?
Millions of answers, millions of
Millions of
answers.
answers. As
I'm
many
always
people.
further away to the answers to the questions that I ask by talking and more, which I think is philosophy. I think it's an
Oh,
unravel.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. I am part of a graphic novel book club. This is a tangent, but um, and every month I read the graphic novel, and I have an opinion about it, and I have a way I feel about it, and I have critiques and things I love about it, and then I go into the group to listen to everybody else's view on it, and I always feel, if I hated it, I always like it more. If I loved it, I always have more criticism for it. I always feel less sure leaving the discussion. And I
Yeah.
love that.
That's I want to pause right there. I love that as well, and loving that is a weird territory. It's just a weird territory to. I don't know. Hunter S. Thompson used this all the time, queering things up, right? And it just
Mhm.
like new ideas and your opinion changing. Graphic novel book club. Holy crap, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. Every month, tell me about it. Every month you do
Yeah.
picks out
It's just at the library.
the
It's at the
library.
library in Corvallis. Yeah, they pick out like 6 books every quarter, and it's just a regular old book club, but it's the only one I've ever heard of doing graphic novels, and I love it.
I love the graphic novel book club. Yay on Corvallis Library. Everybody, if you don't know, libraries are actually where it's at. And
Yeah.
and librarians are our greatest vanguard of
Yeah.
love our librarians. I find it alarming. A little bit of a tangent on myself. I represent librarians in some of the union work that I do, and my gosh, those jobs are just like disappearing, literally disappearing. And it's one of the more alarming trends that I've seen, to see whole campuses, schools, high schools, and there's just this cursory attention to that, the literacy or what the library can do for research. And I just humbly say that Google has not ended the library. Like there's a trail of thought out there. If you talk to people, it's somehow that like, kids can just Google it now and be like, I can Google a lot of things and I can get a lot of things. And it's the skills of ascertaining and separating things that my gosh, I think we're losing out on, losing it over time. But yay to Corvallis Library, libraries in general. I got to join this book club. Maybe it's fun to get pushed to read things. I think with book clubs too, like
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't pick what you're reading. You're like, oh, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Just
I'll answer your question for what.
Yes.
What is art to me?
What is art to you? The role
of art for me.
Mm-hmm.
So we've sort of been talking about this a little bit as we've been chatting, but one of my favorite aspects of life is the complexities of life, the nuance, the gray areas, the things that people aren't 100% sure about. And so I feel like one of the things that I keep coming back to is those juxtapositions. I have a series of illustrations of of birds who are like beautiful, full illustrations. I think they're beautiful, and they are saying very sharp and harsh things, and I call them my rage quit birds. Because like birds are these beautiful creatures, but also the ones that we are most attached to. Like everybody's drawn pictures of crows and these beautiful birds. They're very aggressive. Like they're beautiful, but they are a part of nature, and they can be vicious and mean, and we still find them beautiful. And so I have this like series of birds, like peacocks. I've been told are very aggressive. I have a peacock that says "Leave me alone." I like finding those nuances, in stuff. So maybe that's the role of art for me.
On that point too. In that space, maybe the border or like between two type of things, I think that's where a lot of philosophy happens. And in talking about my general idea, it's no put down on any of the almost 300 guests that I have on that I'm not closer to it. It's this great comfort in being like knowing many ways to talk about it and getting closer to the experience of, maybe it's truth. It seems like a strong word, but of what it is or what's happening. I found overall that for me, the example that I would think of is the border, right? Like whether it's an intellectual or physical border. I'm fascinated by the border because you're in this state or this country and you're there and not there, and that's where it's so interesting because you're like, what am I supposed to be doing? What codes are of behavior? What has changed from this space to that space? So
Mm-hmm.
I always like I'm a big Cormac McCarthy fan and the novelist,
Yeah.
the Border trilogy, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
language is Spanish and English, and it's it's the border, and uh, that territory is not easy territory for many people to exist in. As a matter of fact, they run from it. Like the questions on this show are people like get weird reactions because it's like, I don't want my life complicated by,
Yeah.
like by
Oh.
being confused on this.
Who wants to spend their life not knowing?
Who wants to spend their life not knowing? Or
Apparently artists do, because
artists, yeah, yeah. But I think the ability to experience discomfort is something
mm-hmm.
within our is to exist for a certain amount of time in an area that might not be fully comfortable, not in a dangerous way, but or maybe would have an element of that, but just not feeling so comfortable, right? Not feeling so
Yeah.
comfortable, and that's what I like about thinking in philosophy. In these type of questions. Let me ask you the big one, just so we can get out of the way and we can talk about some more birds that you've drawn. Um, it's the title of the show, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
big question. Some say the biggest question possibly to be asked: divinity, God, or not, or whatever. Why is there something rather than nothing? Do you have a do you have a dispositive answer, or something that'll just
Man, I knew the question was coming.
There's nothing you can do about it. There's going to be an
You just have to
episode.
watch it.
There's going to be an episode. I've been. After I've asked the question, two of the more memorable times was, "Fuck you," and the other time is, "You're a bastard." So and those are
Yeah.
acceptable too. But yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah. Man, it is the big question, but it might be one of those that I spend a little bit less time thinking of than. Well, that's not true. I was about to say I don't spend that much time thinking about it, but I know that that's not true. So, like, I'm not a religious person. I'm an atheist, and I think our existence on this earth is a confluence of a bunch of random elements, and I think that's the coolest thing.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. It doesn't fill me with this sense of defeatist nihilism that, like, well, we're just here, so what does it matter? I think it's great that we're here. I think it's completely random, and I think it's the most human thing to ask why we're here. But who is it that said this? I think it was Viktor Frankl said something like he didn't say it quite this way, but the meaning of life is that life has meaning.
Yeah.
The meaning of life is that we make meaning out of it, and that we get to decide what that is. And there's another quote from a TV show I haven't watched. It's from Angel, the spinoff of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But the quote is, "If nothing we do matters, all that matters is what we do."
I love
and
it.
I think that's basically how I live my life. Like, yes, we are on this rock that's hurtling through space and we'll be gone in a blink of an eye. So I guess the only thing that matters is how we interact with each other and how we take care of each other.
From Viktor Frankl to Buffy and Angel. I love it. I love it. That Viktor Frankl, I once in a while it comes up in a show, and my gosh, Man's Search for Meaning, gender title, but
Yeah.
what a beautiful, profound work. Just
Yeah.
a really amazing thing. And I think it comes up. And of course, a colleague, not a colleague of mine, but somebody I learned from, a philosophy professor out in, former professor out at Marquette University, James South, was an editor of Buffy and Philosophy volume, right? So there's these popular culture
Oh, man.
volumes that are
Mm-hmm.
so distinct volumes on a lot, but like it'd be like the Watchmen and philosophy, baseball and philosophy, Red Sox and, well, I'm a Red Sox fan. Red Sox and philosophy, Simpsons and philosophy. I think the first volume was Seinfeld and philosophy because that was just
Oh, man.
an absurdist philosophy show, like
Yeah.
forever. And so the popular culture and but there was a great volume, Buffy and philosophy, and
That's amazing. I'm going to write
yeah,
that down.
yeah. So you'll there's a singular publisher. I can't. I'll have it in the show notes, but there's a surprising amount of titles within this, and basically from academics, some freelance folks, and you'd have really the kind of interplay of like classical philosophy a lot of times and in popular culture, and that's something that's always really interested me, and it's just like the way my mind works. Uh, Talking about philosophy where it's like real and isn't some, you're looking at a picture of a white guy from centuries ago and you can't read what's there. I mean, it's great stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to say it's all the same, but there's philosophy in these interactions in different places, and popular culture is such a great. When I taught philosophy, I used that because I don't know. I got a simple brain. I'm like, well, my students are 18, 19, 20. This show's
Mm-hmm.
popular. How do I get them to read
Mm-hmm.
the damn thing? Like, how do I get
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
interested? I have to refer to something, and it's not non-substantive. It's just a fun
Mm-hmm.
kicking off point. So, okay, so we got some of the big ones there, the something and
Mm-hmm.
the nothing. I do share your sentiment on. There's something about if you think or you question or you believe that there isn't one creator. It isn't the whole of nihilism that you talk about because
Mm-hmm.
like existentialist philosophy and other philosophies are like, okay, this is the fix we're in, folks. If it feels like a fix, it is. But what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? And I think that's where there's this incredible opening. And I think that the angel quote there fits fits right into that. We're figuring this out. I wanted to jump in and have you talk a little bit about where to find your art, like Coffee
Mm-hmm.
and Wine, and either physical places to see your art or your website. So make sure we get that in there about
Mm-hmm.
where to find you and your art.
Yeah. Yeah. The best place to find me is my website, which is araneapush.com. But if you have trouble spelling it, don't worry. So does everyone else. So you can also go to fandadorable.com, which is the name of my store, but it's all connected. It's all in the same it's all on the same website. And my book is on there as well. Coffee and Wine. All of the pages are there to read, but it's also where you can buy physical copies from me. As of right now, Browser's Bookstore in Albany is the only like physical place. Well, I suppose there's another place in Corvallis. The only physical place that is carrying my book right now. So it's mostly just me.
That's okay. That's okay. We know where
Yeah.
to Browser's Bookstore in
Mm-hmm.
Albany. We had chatted a little bit about that, and a bookstore owner, and kind of a convergence point for interaction with art and local publishing. I've had Craig Randall, a poet novelist from Corvallis,
Oh my gosh.
in on the show, and beautiful writing, beautiful poems. And one of the more important things about Craig, and my understanding, is that talking about mental health, males' mental health, poetry, expression, and dealing with things, and just encountering this incredible local art that you find here, and it's such a joy, because I think the bookstore, a bookstore,
Mhm.
is like the place, and there's a lot of foot
Yeah,
traffic
it's such a
there.
treasure.
It is, and talking about art. So, Browser's Bookstore in Albany, also online presence there, and of course on the website. And I had in quotes here because I didn't miss it. Effing adorable,
Yeah.
effing adorable. You had to. I had it in quotes. Yeah, it's effing adorable. I didn't know what the words were, and that's why I chose them. It's effing
Yep.
adorable. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I I, uh, I enjoyed it. I was very happy to encounter coffee and wine. About your other design work, I've seen some on your website. What how's that fit in? Do you do that on and off, discrete images? And
I do it pretty regularly. I have a Patreon that I create every month. I create prints and stickers for. So I find that I am making illustrations pretty regularly, but it's mostly just for me. Um, whatever I think is interesting, I might make it into a print. I have the luxury of having my own printer, so I don't have to
yeah,
go through the hassle of figuring out how many copies to make of something. I could make 3 and take it to a market.
I love that. I Patreon too. They find it by a name, by your name, or just
Yeah, just by
okay.
my name.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, Patreon's great. I found one of the really cool things about the physical art itself. I'm a big fan of Mark Palm, artist up in Burien, Seattle area.
Mm.
About once every month or two. Yeah, nice little booklet, sketches and stuff. I think these things are just so I'm like, I can't believe I have it. I'm a big fan, but like getting it in the mail, like US mail, being excited about US mail and getting art in the mail is a really cool thing. So Patreon's a great place for that. And I can, if I search and then join up your Patreon, it sounds like I might be able to get my hands on some of the stickers then, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. I got I got my profound plan. I'm glad. So website, Patreon, physical copy, browsers, bookstore. But folks, really take a look at coffee and wine, even online. Get a physical copy if you can, because if you're like me, I do love digital art. I'll flip through things, but having your hands on this, as you know,
Yeah.
right, is
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love having the book.
is quite the thing. It's been amazing to talk to you. I'm glad we've been able to connect, and being like right in the same area here in Oregon. I had one more question for you, if you could.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned were you born and did you grow up partially in Nebraska? Is that where you were?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And coming to Oregon, I'm originally from Rhode Island. I lived in Wisconsin for about 12 years. Wisconsin. And I've been out here in Oregon for about 13 years. I'm amazed, befuddled, confused, but I love Oregon, and it's not like any other place. And when it comes to creativity, self-expression, First Amendment rights, individual expression, good and bad politically, wild politically, but people do and show and the things. As an artistic environment, what was it like to encounter these woods up in Oregon?
That's an interesting question. I feel like moving to Oregon was the best thing I ever did for my art, just because it put me around other people who were also making art. Like I said earlier, growing up in Nebraska, and it wasn't just growing up in Nebraska; it was growing up in small town Nebraska. That it's hard to find other people doing art, and my family was very a little blue dot living in a sea of red as far as politics goes. So like I spent a lot of my time in Nebraska sort of feeling on the outs, especially being an atheist. I was raised Catholic, so there was a whole journey there of not feeling like I quite fit. And then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona to try out a big city. And we lived there for about 5 years, and it just wasn't for us, because we did still love the small town. I love the quiet life. I love the slow, quiet life. And we had some friends living in Portland at the time, and we came to visit them. And it was just within a couple of days, that was it. We moved here, and that was about 6 or 7 years ago. But I don't feel. I don't know if it's good to feel like you completely fit in, and I don't feel like I completely fit in Oregon. I mean, coming from Nebraska, I definitely have moments where I feel very conservative compared to the other people around me, even though I would never describe myself that way. But I love living here because I feel like I can do whatever it is that I need to, whatever way I need to express myself. I do feel like there's space here to do that, which is important to me.
I think there is the space. There's so many contradictions in Oregon. And I think the space is the number one thing, in the sense of creatively, there's a supportive spirit or structure here, it seems to be. But it's a place of deep contradictions. I find it to be, in spots, very xenophobic, as far as like you're an outsider, and and by not fitting, it's not like I came here, I'll never fit in Oregon, and that's cool. Like I can't, like I open my mouth and I get rambling, and you're not from around here.
Yeah.
That's okay, because it's I don't know, as a creator, the way my brain works, I've never just kind of walked around and been like, wow, everything's fallen in place for me. And that's not a sad story. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
how we're built. And I did grow up Catholic out in Rhode Island, but if you're from Rhode Island, it's 9 out of 10. You're Catholic. So I met a Protestant when I went to high school, and I didn't know what it was. Like, that's how Catholic I was.
Yeah.
Protestant. I was like, this guy just out himself as a communist or something. Like, what is it? Like, what? Protestant? I asked somebody. I didn't know anybody was a Catholic.
Yeah.
That's the Rhode Island experience. And you were Catholic in Nebraska, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
One of my great influences in me in philosophy is my friend Andy Gustafson, who's from rural Nebraska, pig farmer.
Oh.
I met him while studying philosophy at Marquette University, and man, I learned so much from him about philosophy, but about Nebraska. He was a member of the Free Church. I hadn't even heard of any of this stuff. So really, I mean, the similarities, like, how do you put these two together? But a great a friend of mine, and I have a great appreciation for what I learned from him about Nebraska. And he teaches at Creighton over there. Is that in Omaha? I believe it's in Omaha, Nebraska. That's all right.
I'm gonna lose my Nebraska card.
Hey,
my brain broke. I'm like, oh, geez, I don't know.
I didn't mean that. Oh, yeah. I mean, all of a sudden, like, you saw the notes for this that you made. You're like, okay, he got the Creighton, and I need to know where Creighton is. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Unbelievable. It's been so wonderful to talk to you. Everybody. Get coffee and wine, or at least look at it online to get up. I'm holding up a copy now. I physically have it. I have my notes in the back, but it has been such a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. It was lovely to meet you.
Lovely talking art and recording from Albany, Oregon, with home of many artists. I think a lot of them are hiding. Novelist, the person who created Jar Jar Binks is from Albany. I'm a big Jar Jar Binks fan. I'm out myself right now about that. That's a whole other story. But it's great to connect. And again, everybody, Browser's Bookstore, support your independent bookstores. Join the graphic novel reading club, book club, if it is, or start your own.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much out there.
All right. This is Something Rather Than Nothing signing off.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.